So lately I've been struggling with something that's probably very common and that you've experienced yourself at some point. I think we all kind of do. It's been a lack of motivation. And for me, it's been particularly about working out, and my motivation has just kind of up and disappeared. And it's been really frustrating, and I've been trying to wrap my mind around it a little bit, brainstorm, try to figure out how I can get out of this. But at any rate, when I got home from work today, I started drafting up this email. It was to like my dad and my brother and a couple close friends. And it ended up turning into this like 4-page thought experiment, or I don't even know what to call it really, but nothing that I would honestly expect anybody to read thoroughly. So I thought it might be a little bit more fun to just kind of let me read through it real quick, and maybe, it'll help somebody who's struggling to find motivation, or maybe it'll help you in your own personal struggle to find motivation, or kind of recapture motivation, or maybe get motivation for something that you've never had before. I know at the very least it's good for me to share this, and hopefully you'll at least find it entertaining. But I ended up titling it "Lazy as All Hell-itis," and this is how it starts. As some of you may know, over the last month, I've been experiencing a complete lack of motivation to work out. I think the scientific term is lazy as all hell-itis. I mean, it's to the point where I come home and start Googling, why has my motivation to work out disappeared, instead of just going to the gym. I literally have run out of any plausible excuses. At first, it was the new job, and then it was I need to switch to a morning routine. And most recently, my lack of motivation and stress about working out began actually physically impeding my body the few times I did gather up the willpower to go to the gym. And this is where it got really bad. Take a moment to consider the psychology behind this from the functionalist school of thought. Operant conditioning theory states that if a stimulus, such as exercise, elicits a positive response, such as enjoyment or contentment, then people will seek to reproduce those feelings by engaging in that behavior again. Now, apply that to my situation. Previously, while motivated, I would go to the gym, work out, and when I was finished, I'd look in the mirror and I'd feel good. Sometimes I'd feel amazing. And that was positive reinforcement at its best. I believe it was that conditioning that helped me adhere to a consistent routine. Recently, however, the opposite began occurring. This past month, I can remember 3 specific workouts where I was miserable at the gym. It would start about 20 minutes in. I'd be benching or doing dips, and I just felt so weak. I couldn't do the weights I was doing previously. My squats went from 3 sets of 5 at 225 pounds to 3 sets of 5 at 150 pounds. My bench went from 3 sets of 5 to 165 pounds to 3 sets of 5 at 145 pounds. And the same thing with dips and running. It all went to shit. It got so bad that during 2 of those bad workouts, I quit. I literally said, F this, and I left the gym. Followed by defeating thoughts like, this sucks, I'm weak, and what's the point? That is some serious negative reinforcement. Even though it only happened 2 or 3 times in a month, even though it only happened 2 or 3 times in a month, it happened consecutively, and it was getting progressively worse. So, quite naturally, I stopped going to the gym altogether. Working out went from high on my priority list to low. The guilt I was feeling of not working out was still very high, but my motivation to actually do it was non-existent. The high guilt compounded the negative reinforcement. Not only was I skipping workouts, I was skipping workouts while negatively reinforcing even the idea of working out. At this point, I'm dumbfounded, frustrated, and ridden with guilt. Thinking in strictly logical terms hasn't worked, so maybe I need to start thinking more abstractly. Maybe if you're struggling with the same thing, creating your own analogy will help. It's worth a try, right? Alright, so here it goes. It's as if back in January of 2013, I realized I was stumbling around in the dark. I was 190 pounds, had just come to terms with the fact that I was, and still am, an alcoholic. I could no longer bear the dark, hopeless place that my life had become. It was what is commonly referred to as rock bottom. What happened next you don't often hear people speak of. What happened next is that I was no longer at rock bottom. I was standing at the precipice of recovery. However, the road I needed to travel was still shrouded in darkness. I would need something to light the way. I needed a light to illuminate my surroundings and guide me safely from the edge of the wreckage that remained of my previous life. I was equipped with a long band of lights, like Christmas lights, all of which were burnt out. But by the grace of God, I had one replacement bulb left. This last bulb was God himself. And once I plugged in that miracle bulb, a few of the other bulbs began to light up. Some of you reading this were these bulbs for me. One of those bulbs was my plan to get healthy. That meant eating right, exercising. Eating right and exercising. This bulb shined very brightly and was wired to many other bulbs in my band of light. With my bright strand of lights, I set out on a new triumphant journey to create a sustainable and content life. One filled with gratefulness, good humor, generosity, and the most important, capital G, God. Now, fast forward a bit to 1 year and 6 months later. I've come a long way, scratch that, 1 year and 5 months later. I've come a long way on this journey, and as life would have it, one of the bulbs in my strand of lights burned out. Maybe it burned out during the treacherous journey of changes I've experienced so far. God only knows, it was far from smooth sailing. Objectively, I moved apartments, I found a new roommate. Then the job change, that was a huge impact on my schedule. Different hours, a longer commute, heck, even a longer workday. Selling the Mustang, starting to pay back my financial debt and live more frugally. All the meanwhile, working the AA program and trying to stay sober one day at a time. On top of the objective changes, there were the subjective emotional battles, coming to terms with some skeletons that I didn't even know were in the damn closet. Any of these could have potentially jarred the delicate filament within the light bulb. I, however, suspect that it was something else that caused this bulb to burn out, something new to me, something positive that I haven't experienced in a long, long time. And what was it? My goal when I set out on this early January of 2013 was to eat healthy, lose the fat, and get back to being fit. From the 190-pound beer belly Matt to the 168-pound lean and sober Matt. And I freaking did it. By the grace of God, help and support from friends and loved ones, a dash of positive reinforcement along the way, and voila, I have achieved that goal. And that's great and all, but what I want to highlight is I never truly stopped to appreciate this. And by this, I don't mean appreciate that I lost weight. I did appreciate that. I mean truly recognize that I set a goal for myself and I actually stayed focused and dedicated long enough to achieve it. I suppose I just expected that I would continue to work out and keep getting skinnier and more muscular. I never sat down and significantly refocused my new goals and how my plan would change to accommodate these new goals. This, I think, is especially important when you consider the changes in my day-to-day life that I mentioned before. To go back to the light bulb analogy, I saw that the cumulative glow produced by this strand of lights had gotten a little dimmer, but I never stopped to examine it. I just figured best to keep trudging along and that the light would gradually get brighter again. But that's not how it works. So now, after some intense frustration, and quite honestly, I'm being serious, like intense frustration for a couple of weeks now. So now after some intense frustration about this dimmer light, I have finally sat down and identified the faulty bulb. It was the bulb that I mentioned earlier, the one that encapsulated my plan to eat healthy and exercise to lose weight. You may remember I stated that this bulb is a very important one. This bulb is interconnected to many others, so when it went out, a few of the other lights did too. And now, well, now's the fun part. I get to create a whole new plan that will spawn a brand new bulb, perhaps of even higher voltage and luminous than its predecessor. And just like that, I feel the motivation starting to flow again. I've come to understand that almost every variable is out of our control. What I can control is what happens today, not what happens tomorrow. I think that living with this understanding helped to free the mind and spirit and relieve some of the anxiety and tension we sometimes feel when life doesn't go according to plan. But as great and freeing as this type of mindset can be, there's a not so great extreme side to it. One where we just kind of take our hands off the steering wheel and glide through life. If almost everything is out of our control, then why struggle to guide this vessel at all, right? I'm starting to see that this hands off the wheel approach, this hands off the wheel type of living isn't necessarily a good way to live either. For me, it's better than trying to control everything, but not quite the best way to do things. Perhaps there is a way to find a balance between having a death grip on the steering wheel and letting go completely. And maybe, more importantly, having the capacity to be honest enough with ourselves to see when we're holding too tightly or when we need to gently guide the vessel towards calmer seas. And that is where this ends, at least for now. I've got a bit of navigating to do, but I think with this mindset, I'll be able to shed some new light on how to restore my motivation. And that's it. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm feeling good about it. I got to figure out what this new plan is going to be, but I have a few ideas. So, thanks for watching, and again, I hope this helps somebody else maybe get through their own struggle of trying to find motivation, because I'm definitely feeling a lot better about where I'm at and this journey to kind of recapture my motivation. Okay, peace out.